my friends. We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line.
They're not booing, they're cheering. Joining me now, my friend, even though he's extremely dressed down today, host of the Steve Deace Show, Steve Deace. Steve, the truth is, you import a bunch of foreign leeches, you can get up and give speeches and tell them how much crap you're going to give them, and it gets you elected. This is what they want. You can tell them till they're blue in the face, it's not going to work. They don't care.
Brother, there's some devil's arithmetic in all of this we should lay out for your audience. Number one, the average voter turnout, I know you are rightly railing against Republican primary voters on a consistent basis as the root of all American evil, essentially, for our complacency, and you're right. Well, the average turnout in New York City mayoral elections in the 21st century is 25%. And it is estimated about 25% of the city of New York is currently non-English speaking. That can't possibly be a coincidence. These are almost like providential forces. Secondly, if you look at his two predecessors, there's some talk on our side about how this is some kind of outlier, and he's not an insurgent. He's a fulfillment. The city already tried godless Republican corporatism where corporations are God. It tried that under Michael Bloomberg. It then tried godless Sandinistaism under de Blasio, a literal Sandinista, not a euphemism, not an exaggeration, not a metaphor. He literally worked out of the offices of the Sandinistas in the city of New York as a younger man. So it tried two forms of godlessness. It only makes sense now that it will try another form of godlessness, provided that it is shrouded around the false god that Mamdani represents. This is A plus B equals C stuff culturally. And in many respects, New York City, post-Rudy, tried the two wings of the unibrow. It tried them both, didn't like the answers it was getting. And so, eventually something has to rule and something has to be worshipped, Jesse. And so the false god that Mamdani represents, he's going to be worshipped and ruled in New York City now.
Steve, can you make this connection for me? Because this is right up your alley. Because I think about this stuff a lot. Nobody, not a single person on earth, of any religion, of any race, of anywhere, nobody wants to live in a dirty place. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to live in a crime-filled place. These are just universal human things. I want things to be clean. I want to feel safe. I want my wife, my kids. These are universal human things. Yet people, over and over and over again, New York City most definitely, they vote for dirt and crime.
Yes.
Help me understand.
Because ultimately, desire isn't worldview, or isn't destiny. Worldview is destiny. And ultimately, yes, human beings want those things, Jesse, but not at the expense of not having their worldview affirmed. And if their worldview gets in the way of those needs and instincts being fulfilled, they will just lie and incorporate them into their worldview as if that is happening. So, for example, hey, I'm on my third generation. I'm black in an inner city like Chicago. We're on our third generation of dysfunction. And a Republican hasn't won a mayoral seat here literally since Columbus and his 3 ships landed in the New World, right? So clearly it must be the Republicans who hate me and are a bunch of racists who are the reason why I've done all the policies of all the people I have voted for, and yet I continue to get exactly what I say I don't want, and that I vote for more of it again. Because to admit otherwise, human beings as a species, brother, outside of the God of the Bible, we are not really good at humility. Nobody really gets up in the morning and says, I can't wait to admit when I'm wrong. We're not good at that. And so if my narrative of my worldview, all right, my religious conviction, and we all have one, we all have the God-shaped hole in our heart, as Blaise Pascal once said. If that is being questioned, even if it means there are people who buried their loved ones out of the rubble of 9/11 not 25 years ago, Jess, and they're going to go vote for Mamdani on Tuesday and then say people like us are racist and Nazis for asking, why would you do this? Because my worldview must be affirmed. My religion must be confirmed. Even if it doesn't line up with the facts on the ground, I will make the facts on the ground change in order to line up with my worldview, because otherwise I would be forced to admit my worldview is a scam.
Steve, then how do we save our cities? Because I've said it over and over and over again. We don't really have, these are not America anymore. They're hostile foreign city-states that reside within our borders. And
Correct.
while you and I can move out, people who find an opportunity can move out and get away from it, it's still not good for the country we both love to have hostile foreign city-states inside of our borders. Can they be saved?
Yes, but the first thing we have to do is make sure, and you know this better than me. You're a soldier. I'm not. We have to have a secure home front first, brother. All right. We need to make sure our red states are every bit as red as the blue states are blue. All right. Alabama's got to, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia, South Carolina have to be every bit as red as Oregon, Maryland, California, Washington State. Vermont, Delaware are blue. We have to have a home front first. Because you're right, these are foreign countries, which means you're really talking about liberating them. That a form of invasion. And we're not talking militarily here, but culturally, what you're describing is we have to invade them. But we need to make sure our own home front is secure before we do that. Otherwise, we get spread too thin, and we've just launched a two-front war. We can't win either way, and we're caught in a no man's land. So step number one is we have to secure the homeland first. Our red states have to be as red as the blue states are blue. That's a non-negotiable. Attempting to do anything for these cities without accomplishing that is just literally wasting of resources and time and talent and treasure we don't have. They must be as red as the blue states are blue. But then after that occurs, what you're really talking about is a form of cultural invasion. And there's no way to successfully accomplish that. And in some respects, you'd even describe it as missionary work. You're going to need mass spiritual awakening and revival. You're going to need, whether the existing churches in these blue cities are not capable of it, then missionaries are going to have to go in there, as if these massive, churches like Tim Keller's aren't really there, and begin just literally preaching the gospel to people, which is the always step one into understanding that you can be a free person, is that you can be freed of your own sin. I mean, that's why we had great awakenings and then had a revolution. You can't have rights that come from God if people are disconnected from God. And that's what's really happening in these blue cities, Jess. They become godless.
Steve, let's talk about deportations. Obviously, I'm happy they're happening, but we're about 50 million away from actually getting ourselves right. Does the GOP have the stomach to continue and build? I understand, and I already gave them credit for it, the Trump administration's not only doing it, they're building the machine to make it accelerate and do it harder and faster. That's good. Do we have the will to continue this for another 10, 20 years? Because that's what it's going to take.
I think in our age group and younger, the answer is yes. And I think the question then becomes, how soon can that generational group assume positions of leadership within the hierarchy of the party? And I think what you're seeing right now with the government shutdown is you're watching one of the great shibboleths of our era, the McConnell mythology that Republicans, going back to the Tea Party era, remember how frustrated we all were that Boehner just negotiated against himself and never pushed any of his leverage because we couldn't ask a government shutdown, we always lose. Well, you're watching that heterodoxy. Trump is smashing that shibboleth right now. Republicans have held together on this longer than probably you or I thought was possible. Their messaging on it has actually been fairly decent. So Trump to me is just stage one of a generational counteroffensive here. Stage one, we have to blow up these media narratives that have been the shibboleth of the dam, the fig leaf of these Republicans for their excuses for a generation of being simps and subservience to the spirit of the age. Probably the greatest accomplishment of Trump's era is going to be that he violated all these media norms and was politically successful nevertheless. And what you're hoping then is the generation that comes after him, whether it's a Vance, whether it's a DeSantis, more names, that they then are now able to deepen the theology of that disruption and point out that there's actually now a counter way of life that we need to pursue. That it's not just enough to disrupt the systems that destroyed us. We now have to implement an entirely new system and framework, which means We get to decide as a country who's a citizen here and who's not, who gets access to our social safety net and who does not, who gets to be educated and who does not, and who gets to even have a single, appendage on the soil known as the United States of America and who does not. All right, that the United States of America is a nation. All right, it's a nation made up of its people, and here the people rule, and that's going to probably come in the era to come, provided we can be politically successful enough in this era to pass the baton on to such people.
Steve, final one from me here. The government shutdown. It feels to me like Democrats have the tiger by the ears here. If Republicans won't negotiate, and to your point, I thought they would cave. I even said they would cave. They haven't. If they won't negotiate, Democrats can't cave for their base, but it's not looking good for them in the polls. How do they let go of this tiger?
So, there's a movie line we quote on my show all the time, Jesse, from The Hunt for Red October. The hardest part of playing chicken is knowing when to flinch. Okay. And so right now we're heading into November 1, and a different layer of people are going to be impacted by this shutdown than have been for the previous few weeks. And so what Democrats are banking on is that new layer of people who are going to be, injured by this will turn the numbers and the data around and the heat on Republicans around, and they'll cave. And so the next couple of weeks, if this goes on, that's what the real pressure point comes upon Republicans. If they withstand that, then all that pressure and heat goes on the Democrats, because the longer this goes on, the more used to only having government in Washington operate at about 65% of what it normally does, people that kind of get used to. And so that's what's occurring right now is, can the Democrats create enough people in the short term that find themselves injurious enough that they might otherwise vote Democrat when they were going to vote Republican, and that will get your squishy Republicans to cave. So far, they've not been able to do that. And then the longer this goes on, you're right, and your analogy is right on the money, the more this pressure shifts to the Democrats, because many of their conventional wisdoms are being dispelled. And frankly, you get to a point where the only people who really care if this thing really reopens, provided we're funding the military, where a lot of our voters are, provided that the only people otherwise who care were never voting for us in the first place. And that's kind of what's being sifted out right now.
Steve, thank you, brother.
You got it, man. Thank you.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.